The Toronto Blue Jays managed to get another huge win against the Los Angeles Angels, and they didn't need to use any of their high leverage relievers today. However, Jordan Romano landed on the injured list for at least 15 days, and the Blue Jays have 16 games in the next 16 days coming up. So they're going to need some help in that bullpen, and I could think of a name that might really be of some assistance to the Blue Jays. So we'll break that down and much more in this episode of Jays Digest. What's up, Jays fans? I'm your host, Peter Vryonis, alongside host Nick Gosse. Another huge win by the Blue Jays. Alejandro Kirk was great at the plate today. The Jays are starting to hit a little bit more, and the pitching continues to be lights out. Apart from that little blimp that they had against the Mariners and just a couple games against the Dodgers, but yeah, they look good. They're starting to rack up these wins here and creating some separation in the wild card standings. But Jordan Romano is going to be out for at least 2 weeks, Nick, and they got a big stretch of games coming up here.
Yeah, very, very important win today. The bullpen, like you said, wasn't taxed too much. We used like Jimmy Garcia was about the only, he never used to be high leverage, but he is now. But before we get into the video, make sure to hit the subscribe button, run the road to 7,500. And let's just start with the game recap today. And let's start with the pitching because it's been the calling card for the Jays all season, which is something that, at the start of the season, we may not have thought about. Obviously, the offense has been dominant. But, Peter, I'll get your thoughts on Manoah a little bit, and then as well, just the dominant bullpen performances by all of us. Genesis Cabrera has been unbelievable. Trevor Richards has been, can't say enough about this bullpen specifically, but what were your thoughts on Alek Manoah today and the bullpen as well?
Well, Manoah looked okay in the first couple of innings. He gave up some hard contact. First off, though, I just hope that Taylor Ward is okay. That was a very scary incident that occurred in the fourth inning there. And you just don't want to see that. You really don't want to see that. But yeah, Manoah looked okay for the most part. His command kind of eluded him towards the end of that outing. And I thought John Schneider did a great job of pulling him when he did. That was a very scary incident to have witnessed. If you're Manoah, probably a little bit rattled now that the bases are loaded. So it was a great time to pull him. And shout out to Genesis Cabrera coming in and getting those two huge outs to seal that to keep the game where it was at 1-0. And I was very impressed with the job that he did. Manoah is taking strides. The velocity is not where it needs to be, but his two-seamer looked very good today. His slider continues to progress. Just the command. That's the big issue with him, and that has been the big issue all year long. He's got to figure that out.
Yeah, and again, looking at the stats here, like you said, his command was a big thing, and going into that fifth inning, his command wasn't where it needs to be, but he only had walked one guy, and then obviously, Shohei Ohtani, who walked him, and he ended up hitting in a runner. But like you said, shout out to Genesis Cabrera, probably the two biggest outs of the game, alongside Trevor Richards, his unbelievable, performance so far this year, and Jimmy Garcia, he ultimately finished the game there at the end. I know it says point one, but he ultimately finished the game and closed it for the Blue Jays. But what a dominant win, and we guaranteed a series win against the Angels. And coming in, for the Angels specifically, of course, they bought at the deadline and they're continuing to buy. They got Lucas Giolito. We come in and we beat them 2 games in a row. Very, very important. And it's exactly what they need to do. And this has kind of been a thing for the Jays where the big series that they need to win, they haven't really been able to get it done, or they'd take 1 of 3 or 1 of 4, and they won the day. And a big part of that obviously has to do with Alejandro Kirk and company there. What a game for Alejandro Kirk. 3 hits, 2 home runs. If he can get going, along with Danny Jansen, who's been one of the best hitting, catchers, if not the best hitting catcher over his past 162 games, health aside, the Jays are going to be very, very scary, and maybe that changes their deadline plans a little bit, but what a game for him, and he's starting to heat up quietly over the past couple weeks.
Right. Yeah, that average is creeping up towards the 260, 265 mark, and it was around in the 230s not long ago. And a lot of people forget that we say Vladdy's got to turn it around, Bo's got to keep hitting, George Springer has to turn it around. People forget that Alejandro Kirk was the cleanup hitter for the Blue Jays last year, and he was a huge reason as to why they got hot in the second half. And he was carrying that offense for a while before Bo Bichette got going, and before Vladdy got going when he had some of those spurts last season. So Kirk's got to get it going. He's got to hit the ball a bit in the air some more because he's been grounding into a lot of double plays. But look what happens when the launch angle increases and he's hitting line drives. Those were a couple of missiles that he hit over there, and absolutely huge, very greatly needed hits that the Blue Jays got there from Kirk.
Yeah, the Jays today got some hits that were very timely, which is something we haven't been able to do throughout some games this season. And, shout out to I mean, everyone else. Danny Jansen was great. Kevin Kiermaier does what he does. Santiago Espinal with a huge 2-run home run to give
Yep.
us the 2-1 lead, and that's someone who's not playing very much and is on the trade market, I'd assume, and continues to do great. And a huge shout out to Whit Merrifield again. Just the Jays are starting to come together as a team. If George Springer can snap out of his 1 for 36 or whatever his skid is, then it'll be even scarier. But the Jays have to continue playing like this because, like you say, they are making up ground in the wild card race. But the Boston Red Sox are on an absolute heater. They've won 5 in a row. They're a game and a half behind us. We got to keep winning. Do I think they'll maintain that winning pace? I don't think so. The Red Sox, that is, but you got to keep winning. And
Well, they're getting Trevor Story and Chris Sale back very soon, so it's gonna be they're breathing down their necks, that's for sure.
yeah, and the Jays, and they could make some moves at the deadline. But speaking about the deadline, Peter, let's get into this now. Jordan Romano goes to the 15-day injured list yesterday with lower back inflammation, or today from his injury yesterday. Jimmy Garcia and Eric Swanson likely to cover the Jays closer role for a bit. And you saw Jimmy Garcia out there today warming up to close the game when it was 4-1, and ultimately came in anyways. And this is someone who, even a month ago, we wouldn't even be thinking to put in a leverage game with the way his season was going. But Peter, a guy we're talking about who we touched on in yesterday's video is Josh Hader. Apparently he's might be or is becoming available, and his stats are unbelievable. He had a very poor 2022, but looking at his career stats, his stats this year, if we went out and got him, we'd have one of the best bullpens, if not the best bullpen in the majors. Do you think it's possible, or do you think the Jays should maybe go for a bit lower? I think they need to make a bullpen move anyways, because this 17 and 17-day stretch is going to be brutal, a 17-game straight coming up.
Yeah, it's definitely a tough stretch of games that the Blue Jays are going to have to go through here, and they have what it takes to get a deal done. I don't think it's going to cost Ricky Tiedemann. It might cost Aurelvis
Yep.
Martinez and another high-end prospect, but I would go ahead and do that if I'm the Blue Jays. Jordan Romano and the rest of the bullpen has been your calling card all season long. They've been so reliable. They've been eating up a ton of innings for those starters that haven't gone deep into games. But right now, you could see that it's taxing on them. Eric Swanson doesn't look like the same pitcher he did in the months of April and May and June. Jordan Romano is now sidelined for at least 2 weeks. Now we say 2 weeks, but it could be a lot longer than that. He's got to go through a rehab process. Might even be closer to a month before we see him back into game action. Jimmy Garcia, he's starting to get there,
He's
but
all right.
do you
He's all
really
right.
want him? Do you want him closing games for you?
No.
I don't think so. So the Jays right now, I think the rest of the team is starting to come around. I still believe that they need another bat when it comes to deadline additions. But Josh Hader is the cream of the crop when it comes to relievers, and why not go out and get him? Because your team's starting to play better, and you need that shutdown guy until Romano gets back. If they can't get through these 15 games, it could break their season. It might get them out of the playoff race altogether. So you need someone to get you through that.
Yeah, and I think that this puts some maybe some more pressure on Ross Atkins and Ben Nicholson Smith, and we'll have videos on this coming up. They made some reports that they've always wanted a bullpen arm, but I think maybe like we're discussing now, and you just discussed, the level of impact for that bullpen arm needs to be heightened a little bit because there's not too many elite relievers available. And if Josh Hader is available, then you really need to go for him. Someone like Michael Lorenzen from the Detroit Tigers could also be a guy who probably costs a little bit less, but would also do the job. But I agree with you. I mean, we can't go. We have Nate Pearson as well, called back up now, which is good, but we can't really trust. I wouldn't even. Eric Swanson needs more rest right now. He obviously did great yesterday coming off of
Right.
rest, but if we overwork him again in these next 15 days, then there's no real point of even, obviously winning the games, and he'll just be tired. So very, very interesting. And Josh Hader is a guy that would just, I mean, he would slide into our closer role, I think, even when Jordan Romano comes back, just because of how good he is. He's one of the best, the best closer in baseball this year, I would say, alongside, Romano, Clase, and those guys. But it would take a lot. I don't think it would take Tiedemann unless Blake Snell is packaged. I don't think that's the route they're going to go. Maybe they somehow they also need to get a bat, but if they go for Josh Hader, that means they're kind of signaling that they're going all in, and then maybe Ricky Tiedemann is on the table, and Ricky Tiedemann pitched a 3 innings, 6K game today, I believe, in Florida Complex League, and he was up to 98 miles per hour, so he's looking pretty healthy, and it's a very tough time if you're Ross Atkins right now, because this Jordan Romano injury made his job 10 times harder.
Yeah, but we also got to bank on the possibility that the Padres might not want to sell
And
either, and they just like the Mets. I know the Mets threw in the towel and they decided to sell. They traded Max Scherzer today to the Rangers. They
pending.
traded David Robertson. And they have sold. They're probably going to sell Tommy Pham in the next couple of days. The Padres are in the same boat, man. They spent so much money this offseason that they may not be too inclined to get rid of those expiring contracts, and they might delusionally try to make the playoffs just like the Angels are. But however, they're not in the same realm because they don't have an impending superstar free agent. So it all depends on what the Padres want to do, but Josh Hader and Blake Snell would replenish that farm system to the max after that Juan Soto trade. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I would definitely make a call if I was Ross Atkins, because it's something that the Blue Jays definitely need, especially with Romano being sidelined, and we don't know how long he's going to be out for with the bullpen being taxed the way they are. You got to make that phone call. It's the least you could do if you're Ross Atkins, and hopefully they could swing a deal here in the next couple days.
Yeah, and I think the sticking point there might be Ricky Tiedemann if you are Ross Atkins against the Padres front office, because Ricky Tiedemann
That I
is.
wouldn't do.
I
I
agree,
wouldn't
and
do.
that's what I'm saying. I think the deal could stifle if the Padres want Ricky Tiedemann and whatnot. But let us know what your thoughts are in the comments. What you think a trade could look like. Like we discussed, it would probably be a Arelis Martinez plus another very high end prospect from the Jays system. But at the end of the day, you're getting the best closer in baseball, who is also a lefty, and the Jays are starting to roll. And they need to go all in, I think, or at least make a significant move, one that's not just a minor addition. And we'll be covering all of that and much more over the next few days. Tons of videos coming. The deadline's just 3 days away. Be excited for it. Go Jays.